Okay, this is kind of an experiment. Gonna play a bit of Ghost Recon, and which I've already beaten, but it's kind of fun to fool around in. So for those of you not familiar with the game, you play a bunch of American special forces guys essentially overthrowing the pseudo-government of Bolivia, which is a drug production cartel, mostly cocaine. And you work with the rebels, and basically you do kind of what you'd expect.
There are a lot of lights and switches up here.
CIA's special activity division to do, but
hey man, try to take us off some sweet jumps, alright?
It's an open world game. Kind of your standard Ubisoft formula. Ubisoft, or it's a open world, different regions, little activities and missions in each region. I'd say it's a little more fun than average. Like I enjoy playing Far Cry. The damage model is pretty good. I mean, you can take I'm playing on advance, and you can take 3 or 4 shots before you go down.
Damn, haven't seen anything like this since I was in a sandbox.
Sandbags, barbed wire, observation posts. Rebels must be giving Santa Blanca hell.
Bet these cartel assholes never thought they'd be spending their time dodging snipers and IEDs. Karma sure can be a bitch sometimes.
One of the neat features of this game is you can customize your character and weapons he uses. Customize the character, weapons attachments, and you can customize basically what it's wearing. It's just purely cosmetic in terms of its appearance. It's wearing a heavy ballistic vest. It makes no difference. It's just wearing a tank top. But I don't know. If you kind of want to roleplay or something as a more immersive character, you can. Just generally how I want to try to go. I mean, not to the point where I'm, doing all sorts of crazy stuff, but enough that it doesn't immediately take me out of the kind of action, so to speak. I'd say this game is probably best enjoyed playing co-op. When you play by yourself, you get some AI companions in there. Oh, yeah. Also, there are missile silos that hate helicopters, and they hit you, you are dead in basically one shot. So that kind of restricts how many places you can go via helicopter. I mean, you can dodge the missiles, but it's not super easy to do. You can also take out the silos as well. Which isn't a bad tactic if say, you were playing co-op and you wanted one guy could take out the silos, so the other guy's inserted by helicopter. That might be overthinking a little bit, but that'd be interesting. So right now, my guy's equipped with a M4 and an MP5 and a Desert Eagle. The Desert Eagle's just for kicks. It's kind of ridiculous, kind of for this sort of circumstance. And honestly, if you're playing this game seriously, you're better off using a silenced pistol, because that's one of the quietest weapons you can use, and weapons have various stats about how quiet they are.
Look alive, we got company.
In addition, I don't have any attachments on other than a foregrip and a long barrel in my M4. Just because I find that
Fucking hell!
Yeah, okay. That was entirely my fault. I am rushing it. Normally, so what that mission is, is that you have to protect a radio transmitter from assault by the cartel. And after a second, I'm going to just turn my volume down. By assault from the cartel. And generally,
those Sicarios are fucking that.
Turned it too far down. You're better off served by
hell out of
set
that
some
emitter.
mines ahead of time, and not honestly using
Clear.
the best
How you guys holding up?
for this. Encounter is set by helicopter. Helicopters are like easily drivable on my way out, and I just died again. So good thing this is experimental, because this would be pretty embarrassing to actually show footage of.
You're gonna be alright, you hear me? I'm on the way.
I'm honestly not that bad at this game, no matter what it may look.
What took you so long?
One of the much more interesting things about this game compared to most Ubisoft shows.
Those Sicarios are gonna destroy the emitter. They got the heat.
It's kind of a semi-realistic model. Bullets are projectile, and they have travel time, and they have bullet drop over distances,
That emitter's getting fucked up, man.
which varies based on the weapon and the cartridge it uses. There's usually a silencer, which I don't like to use too much, just because the sounds the gun make are, without it, are just more entertaining in my opinion. Although when I was playing the actual campaign, I was always using sounds just because it's so vital.
That came from the ruins.
I'm gonna die again. And oh, okay, I thought it actually stayed there this time. Yeah, so
We're letting them fuck up that fucking emitter.
Shit, we cut the broadcast.
Wow, that's
Got
actually the
away
first
from
time
us.
I've ever lost a radio. So that's fucking embarrassing. Yeah, so there's legitimately bullet drops, so like long distance shots is a little more fun because you have to figure out how far the bullet will drop based on
Good
the
shooting.
distance
Let's
from
clean
your
up and move on.
target. What's my highest? Let's see, let's check my. I think the longest I've hit something is like 550 meters, I think. And that was with like a high caliber sniper rifle.
We rattled somebody's cage.
So generally,
We got more targets for you.
Frag.
even though I'm just like going in and fucking people, well actually I'm getting fucked up. I'd say you want to stay at a longer range most of the time if you can. Take out sentries quietly, and then
We're gonna look around
go
here
in
for
with
some
a silent
intel.
weapon. Is generally the way you want to do most infiltrations. If you're doing like a defense then, like I did, just then, you should really, in my opinion, you should probably go with mine the area, or set up C4.
Get down before they
I already think that a light machine gun is probably better for this sort of circumstance. Because the amount of times I've died while trying to reload is like truly staggering. You can kind of set up.
I called Packatari for some mortar fire.
You can kind of set up.
Okay, we're still good.
You can run some more. It's kind of like in Mercenaries when
Hey, we're good.
you could basically call it a bunch of times airstrike, except generally there's less of it, and so basically the kinds are you can get a vehicle, you can request additional troops, you can get an area like Recon for you. I didn't have diversion unlocked because I hate the side mission associated with it. Or you can get them to drop a vehicle off for you. Honestly, I didn't really start experimenting with that stuff until just recently. I mostly just played without Rebel support just because I didn't feel like it, I guess. And the game isn't super challenging to be that advanced. So you don't really need it. Although, had I used spotting, I could have saved myself a lot of trouble. If you're not... So spotting, basically, you assign a whole zone, and then everyone in that zone will get marked so you can see where they are, which is extremely helpful if you're trying to do like a mission with stealth involved. Because, like, generally, what kills you is the enemy you don't see, not the ones
Tango
you do.
marked. He's a little close to civilians. I've got eyes on the captain,
Okay,
and
so
baby
here's an
makes
example
3.
where I may need to calculate for bullet drop, although I am higher up, so I may not. Normally, when I was playing the game normally, I'd use optic with maybe 2 times magnification, so these shots were a lot easier. Oh, that's another thing. If you're in...
We're
If
clear.
you're not detected yet, every single hit is a one-hit kill on the enemy. Which is kind of an interesting choice. It kind of makes it almost like a stealth puzzle rather than a shooter, so to speak. It also makes a lot of weapons that don't have very good damage more viable, I would say, for stealth uses. For example, recently for my stealth gun, so to speak, I've been using an MP5, which is the starter submachine gun. And it's not that bad statistically, but there are like just better submachine guns than this. And I'm using it just because I kind of like the way it looks, and right now I'm kind of role-playing, so to speak, as kind of like a deniable asset in Bolivia, and you know, an M4 and an MP5 are not unlikely for like a mercenary or private military contractor to have their hands on, as opposed to like one of the alternatives for submachine guns. There's like, okay, SR 635 by Knight's Armament, that's pretty rare. P90 maybe, P19 Bison. It's a Russian one. I don't know how common they actually are. Although you don't see, they have a conical magazine, which can hold a lot of bullets, but pretty impractical to reload and find and fix if it breaks. MP7. In this game, the personal defense weapons generally have the highest stats of the submachine guns. In real life, that's questionable. They fire usually a bullet more like a rifle than a pistol, so they're generally not as high a caliber, but they are longer and they have more gunpowder. So they're generally firing a smaller projectile at higher speeds. The reason for that in real life is because they're designed to give second-tier troops something that can penetrate body armor. Whether or not they would do more tissue damage, I have no idea. But they definitely do in this game. MPX is by 6 Sauer, and it's I think it's by 6 Sauer. And it's basically just a replacement for MP5. PSG, I don't actually know what that's referencing, but it is basically a Colt 9mm SMG, but I'm guessing it's probably from another company that makes an AR-15 variant. And then there's this, I think this is the C1, which is the Canadian version of the Sterling submachine gun, which is I've basically never used because it occupies a really awkward place in this game because it has very little you can do to modify it, and it has a relatively slow rate of fire, and it can't accommodate a suppressor, which is kind of the only reason to use submachine guns, because generally an assault rifle does everything a submachine gun does, except usually it's louder. So when you do suppress a submachine gun, it's usually very quiet, so you can use it while trying to infiltrate a base. But which you can't do when you're trying to suppress a assault rifle. I mean, you can, but you have to be a little more careful about it, and you have to make sure you're not too close to any enemies you don't want to hear you. Although honestly, it would be kind of fun to use C1 for a while. Like, C1 is basically like this. I don't know if it came out in World War II or if it... I know it replaced the Sten gun. So the Sten gun was a gun in World War II, which was basically something that most of the British Commonwealth was using because it was extremely cheap to manufacture. It was essentially a tube with a trigger Rexum, a magazine, and I think a lawn housing spring. So not only could they make lots of them for not very much money, they could also be made in industries which were very relatively limited. You didn't need a lot of advanced milling tools or anything like that. So that was, and the Sterling is kind of like Well, I don't know if I'd say it's a nicer version of the Sten, because I think it might be a completely different design. It might be based off the Lanchester, which is one they used before World War II, the British, and was a copy of a early German submachine gun, I think. Anyway, yeah, so the Canadians use these for, I think until, so this was serving along with the FN FAL, which in Canada was known as the C1. I think it was replaced by the C8, which is basically a Canadian version of the M4. It's a carbine instead of a submachine gun. Although honestly, I wouldn't be sure about that. I'm not even sure. It's kind of a weird thing to have in this game. Like, in general, the weapons in this game are kind of strange. Like everyone has AK-12s, which is like a new variant of the AK-74, which I don't even know. I don't think it was ever adopted by the Russian military. They talked about it. And then what else is really common? Like Rant, which is a Czech version of a Czech assault rifle, kind of patterned off like the SCAR or the ACR, like basically one of those modular assault rifles. And then basically there's a whole bunch of high-tech shit that you would not expect to be finding in Bolivia. I think that the biggest sin, so to speak, of what they put as armaments in this game would be the fact that every single time there's an in-place machine gun, it's a minigun. It's like a, so I think like I don't know which minigun it is, but it like it's on trucks, it's on in-place buildings, it's on, well, I mean on helicopters. It's not so unreasonable. Like they don't have any, like what you'd expect to find as an in-place machine gun for like a cartel, if they even have them, would be like a Browning
50
caliber machine
got
gun
a
like
third.
M2, or maybe the Russian equivalent, which is like DSHK, which is essentially also firing a 50 caliber projectile.
Hornet's nest.
Yeah, that's Unidad, which is like the actual Bolivian. I don't know if they're the military or if they're meant to be like a military group that's meant to like deal with drug issues, but essentially all they ever do are a problem for you. I mean, they'll fight Unidad sometimes, or they'll fight the cartel, but in general they just are harder enemies, and they kind of have like a Grand Theft Auto style mechanic where if you are fighting them for too long, basically your level of wanted goes up, so they have an increasingly difficult and dangerous sort of enemy. I've gotten it's 1 to 4 stars. I've gotten to 4 stars a few times, and while it doesn't mean you immediately die or anything, it is rather unsustainable at a higher difficulty, because you generally they start deploying like helicopter gunships, which are pretty difficult to deal with. A lot of just waves and waves of troops. And they're all dressed in like crazy amounts of like they almost look like they're wearing like riot gear all the time. So they're a little tankier in terms of taking shots than everybody else. I'm not a big fan of fighting them, to be honest. I don't really, like, from a immersion perspective, it's like, it seems like I'm just kind of killing Bolivian military guys, which doesn't really seem like something I should be doing. I mean, the game totally expects you to, and, like, they're arguably kind of corrupt, but, like, really I shouldn't be here at all, because, like, it's kind of, like, the war on drugs is kind of one of those things. It's like, unasked for intervention in areas of South America or Central America to deal with drug importation. Anyway, regardless of your political opinion on that, just fighting what is essentially the Bolivian army seems like kind of something I should avoid doing. From like a role-playing perspective, but honestly, they just get so annoying that I generally shoot them anyway, just because they're annoying from gameplay purposes. Yeah, the worst thing that can happen is when you're doing like a mission where you're trying to infiltrate like a cartel base, and then somehow Unidad gets involved, like the patrol goes by, and then you have Unidad and the cartel all fighting each other and fighting you, and generally, well, you could argue that kind of chaos gives you an opportunity. Generally, just the level of conflict means that you're going to get seen and you're going to get hit, which isn't great. If I actually, if I had to describe this game with any two other games, I would say that it's kind of a combination of Mercenaries and Metal Gear Solid 5 in terms of its gameplay. Although it doesn't have the ridiculous story of Metal Gear Solid 5 by any means. Although I will admit that
these supplies will buy us a lot of goodwill from the rebels.
Campaigns, you're taking down these cartel members one by one, and
hey, I found a Santa Blanca medal.
They're kind of larger than life figures. They're arguably even kind of tragic in the way they're presented, which is interesting. And generally, I feel like you generally are taking each one and transforming them into a victim of their own cartel, because often what you're doing is you're playing them against their superiors, which is kind of an interesting way to do it. It's a little formulaic because they do it consistently, but it is kind of interesting, and I wouldn't say they're so much larger than life that it hurts the immersion. It does kind of make this story a little more romantic, so to speak, which is interesting. So, like, if they hadn't done that, they'd just all been like stereotypical, like, cartel, gang members, it would have been pretty boring. So I kind of appreciate that. I mean, this game is generic enough in terms of its plotline that if they hadn't done that, it would have been, I think, a really bad move. So, yeah, it was good. I mean, like, I remember playing Metal Gear Solid, which is an excellent game, or 5, and I would recommend anyone who likes that kind of game to play it. But my god, the story in that game is ridiculous. Like, that's the first Metal Gear game I've really played. I mean, I played, I think Metal Gear Solid 2 when I was a kid, but I wasn't really paying as much attention to it then, and that's a very different kind of formula of game in my opinion. But man, the story of Metal Gear Solid 5 is bad. Like, it's kind of interesting. It's bad and it's good. Like, it's kind of going on like a language is viral, and essentially there's this idea that there's some kind of parasite that targets people by language, and it kind of uses that to kind of do like a Tower of Babel thing where they're like cleansing. They're kind of doing like a ethnic cleansing type thing on, like, I think the big one they're targeting is English, and it's like that. Anyone who speaks English gets affected by this deadly parasite, and that's what
there's got to be some intel we can dig up around here.
That's not really it's dumb, but it's not the worst thing I've ever, like, read. I mean, for example, Snow Crash, which is a cyberpunk book, a very famous one, kind of has a similar idea that language are kind of have a viral sort of spread, and I think that's the inspiration for that might be from that book. But just like the way they go about it is so dumb. Like, it's kind of silly, and I think the worst part of that game is, like, you're confronting this, like, weird-looking villain who's, like, the main villain. He's got, like, this whole, he's got, like, a cowboy hat, like, a domino mask on, he wears a black suit, and then he's got, like, weird, like, snake-like skin, and, like, I guess his sort of backstory is he's from whatever organization that sort of cleans up after sort of snake stuff. And like you infiltrate this base, which is like a big deal. And like the way I did it, I basically shot my way through this base, which wasn't too subtle, I'll admit. And then basically you just get in it. There's like you confront him, and then you just go for like a really long truck ride, where he just sort of like tells you about his plans and his like philosophy, and you just stare at this, like you just sit there and like listen to him for like 10 minutes. And I guess maybe they could have pulled it off if like it was really like convincing, but it just comes off as just like sort of like smarmy and kind of I don't know if childish is the right word, but like silly. Which, you know, is also like a valid way to storyline. Like if they made the whole thing like clearly a bit for laughs, which
got some
there is
hostile
humor in that
activity.
game.
Hey,
I think that
we
would
got
have
an arco with a
been
submachine
also
gun.
like legitimate,
Close to
but
the
they kind of
camp
do
entrance.
a bunch of things a little bit, and I don't know. But I would still argue that the gameplay, which is a little sandbox and very much feels unfinished in terms of the content, it's still worth playing through it, especially now because like you can probably get it for not very much money.
Down, you're giving yourself away.
Like I definitely don't regret playing it. Although I would argue that this is a more... Maybe the tools you get in that game are more interesting than this game, but this game is a better sandbox in my opinion. For example, one of the best things this game has done, in my opinion, is the environment is very interesting and very varied. I don't know how varied the environment is in the movie itself, but if it's anything like this, like there's like a salt plains province, there's like one that is forest, like traditional forest, there's like a swampy jungle one, there is what's called Altiplano, which I think is like a sort of semi-mountainous kind of climate, but I don't really know very much about it, so don't take my word for it. But like, in terms of like just the environment, this one's really interesting. Metal Gear Solid's environments are there's two settings, so to speak. There's Afghanistan, which is basically universally just sort of arid, semi-desert-like conditions, and it's Africa, but I can't remember what part of Africa it's in. Possibly the Congo, I think. I'm not sure. And that's just kind of like jungle. And it's alright, but generally it's very, like, I don't think I could tell you, if you just drop me to the Afghanistan map in that game, I don't think I could necessarily tell you just by looking around what part of the map I was on, unless I saw, like, buildings or something. Just because it was very monotonous in terms of the map design. That game's more about the bases and sort of the missions, which are... You can do a lot of different ways, and it's pretty interesting. Okay, so this game definitely has its faults though, and I don't love like you don't need to buy any of the DLC or any of the store things, but there are kind of like microtransactions sort of in the background. They're not so bad that they interfere with the game at all. I haven't bought anything, and I'm perfectly doing okay. But the pricing's really bad for the microtransactions, and they just seem kind of stupid. And that kind of irks me. But like that's kind of
Heads up, hostiles in the area.
unescapable.
We got a
in AAA
Sicario,
game now.
the bridge.
Like, I remember someone saying like that.
All
I think it was
clear, all
EA
clear.
made more money
Hey, cartel
from
lieutenant, near the
microtransactions
ruins.
than they made from literally anything else, or at least from digital sales, despite all the bad press they've gotten from it. So, I mean, I don't think that's going to change, because so long as they make more money doing it, they're not going to ever change it, right? I mean, they have a responsibility to their shareholders, and, you know, they're a business, they're not a...
Grab the cage.
Target
they're not
spotted.
they're not out
We're clear on
to
this side.
just purely make a great product. I mean, they're out to make a profitable product. I'm not saying they're against making a great product by any means, but that's not their first priority. So long as microtransactions are super profitable, and I don't really know why they are. Like, I've never really bought any, and most of my friends that I know haven't bought any. It's possible that, there are countries where they're more popular than here. I've heard microtransactions are more acceptable for the Chinese markets, for example. I don't know if that's the case, but I've heard that. And that's a huge market, right? So if 1 in 10 Chinese gamers bought, I don't know, $20 of microtransactions even, that's a lot of money. And, it's hard to say to a company, don't do that. Right? Like, anyway, it's kind of a tangent. This game's microtransactions are not, they're annoying, but they're not too in your face, and they're not necessary to play the game. What's the only one I've actually felt tempted by? There's you can buy what's called the Predator DLC, although the Predator itself is a free DLC. Yeah, the Predator is in this game, and it's a really annoying fight. And if you buy the DLC, you get iconic guns from the film. So you get a bolt-action rifle called the R93 Blazer, which is a European bolt-action rifle. I don't remember it from the film, but I guess it was there. And then you get a M16, I think an A1 M16 specifically. And that's kind of what I would have. That's the one that has tempted me, because I prefer just it'd be cool to have a full-size AR-15 gun. Although it is kind of, luckily it comes by default with the heat shield that the M16A1 had when I was attaching the grenade launcher. So it's kind of weird if you don't want to use the grenade launcher. If they'd had the M16A4, which is basically a longer M4 with a modular thing, and I mean technically, I think the other difference is that it doesn't have its fire selector is only single fire and burst fire rather than single fire and automatic fire. But in this game, often you can switch the fire selectors. Some guns are only semi-auto or only full auto or things like that. But for the most part, they probably offer both. For example, there was a full auto M16A4, so to speak, although it's not really the same. M16A3, which was, actually don't know if anyone ever used that. I mean, I assume they must have. Otherwise, why would they have made it? But, but really, the one I'm using now, the M4, is basically good enough. I mean, I think studies have shown that the difference in ballistic benefits from so a M4 has a 14.5-inch barrel, and an M16 has, I think, a 20-inch barrel. So that's 6 inches more, firing the same cartridge. And arguably that means that there's more velocity because there's more rifling and there's more. So it's going to be flying a little further before it starts to lose energy in a big way. But I think studies have shown that impact's kind of minimal, especially with modern bullets, which tend to be a little heavier grain than what they were originally designed for. But it's still I just prefer a longer gun visually. So that one I was tempted to get, but now that I've been using the C1 Sterling, why would I need anything else? Because I mean, if you're wandering through Bolivia with a Cold War era submachine gun, that's probably for the most part being melted down if it's a C1, because the Canadian government, I believe, doesn't keep that much of its surplus equipment when they switch. I mean, you got all you need. Absolutely. Anyway, this little experiment's over. I don't know if I'll upload this to YouTube or not. I mean, the sheer number of uhs and delays I've had in this, and it's been so off topic. It's been like half a review of Metal Gear Solid 5, probably a full third of it is me talking about just like gun stuff, which is kind of, if that's not of interest to you, is pretty boring. And then there was a microtransaction rant, but I might upload this anyway. I don't know. See what it's like. I mean, it's kind of fun, and like essentially I'll probably need practice if I do want to get into this. I think it's definitely, in terms of the level of number of uhs and dead air, is definitely reduced from the beginning. So we'll see how it goes. Anyway, if someone watches this, I hope you enjoyed it. It's pretty random though. If I never upload this, well, I will probably try again. Anyway, have a good day.